You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. Welcome to Dolphins Talk Weekly, your one-stop audio breakdown of all of this week's Miami Dolphins news. Now, here is your host, Kevin Dern.
This episode of Dolphins Talk Weekly is brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship to you. International fans, too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. And I am back with another episode of Dolphins Talk Weekly for you. I am Kevin Dern. You can follow me on Twitter at KevinMD4. You can follow the show at DolphinsTalk.com, Spotify, iTunes, Spreaker, wherever else you listen to your podcasts. We're there, and be sure to check out the articles on DolphinsTalk.com. The Dolphins, as I record this, coming to you from a Tuesday night, the Dolphins were victorious last night on Monday Night Football, a 23-15 win over the Los Angeles Rams on the road, a roadkill dub. Pretty rare in the Mike McDaniel era, but we got one. And the Dolphins still have life in 2024. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what I liked from the offense and defense and special teams, what I didn't like, and kind of where the Dolphins go. First, a quick housekeeping note. So I will confirm that I will be in attendance when the Dolphins play the Patriots 2 weeks from now. Because of my travel schedule and because the Dolphins play on a short week that week at Green Bay on Thanksgiving night, I think what I'm going to do is end up not doing a recap for the Patriots game, but we'll do one larger episode some point either on Black Friday or that weekend, recapping both games and kind of giving a stance on where the Dolphins are with the final 5 games to go at that point. So just some quick housekeeping notes, and you might hear my trusty assistant, Chloe, the pit bull, in the background. She's down here in the podcast studio for tonight's game, or for tonight's episode, I should say. And, it was a pretty fun weekend. Did some cool stuff with the kids. Arsenal draw against Chelsea as they head into the international break. My alma mater, the Dayton Flyers, kicking off college basketball season with a big win over a Big Ten school, Northwestern, at home on Saturday. I don't know that I can promise you that there's an Obi Toppin or a Deron Holmes on the team this year, but you'll get a chance to see them in the Maui Invitational coming up in a couple weeks. They will be playing in North Carolina, so that's a bit of a buzzsaw game for the Dayton Flyers, but if you want to check them out, you'll at least get a chance to see them on national television against the Tar Heels. But the big event was the Dolphins beating the Rams 23-15 last night. And honestly, it was a clunky performance, a road-esque performance. Not that the Rams have a great home field advantage, but we saw some glimpses of complimentary football for stretches, which we haven't really seen a whole bunch of this year or really any year since, I don't know, Dan Marino was under center, so that was nice to see. We've got one of the more, if not the most, outlier performance of Tua Tagovailoa's career since he's been a Miami Dolphin last night, and we'll talk about that. And I guess the thing of it is with the way the AFC is, that back door to a 6 or 7 seed is still open right now. And if you look at the Dolphins' schedule coming up, there's, as bad as they've been at times this year and with as many injuries as they've had, there's really no reason they shouldn't be 5-6 going into that Thanksgiving game at Lambeau Field. So I think for me, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, is how does this team respond now that they've got a handful of hope and two subpar teams coming into Hard Rock Stadium in a row. What do they do? How does that work for the Dolphins? I think that's a big question, because we've seen at times they can't handle success, or if you look in years past, they've handled success against bad teams and kind of shriveled against the good teams. Not that the Rams were a great team. They were 4-4 going into that game, but they had won 3 straight, pretty hot, hadn't given up a sack in the previous 2 games, and the Dolphins' defense was all over them. We'll talk about that second. We'll go over the offense first. And I mentioned it before, Tua Tagovailoa, kind of an outlier performance. Was 20 out of 28 on the night, made a terrible interception. That's on him, not setting his feet, throwing in the middle of the field with a lollipop ball. Bad play all around. And then just a sequence of just, let's be honest, just brutally dumb decisions with the football. Thereafter, this game kind of had the feel of what the game script were like back when Brian Flores was the coach. You know, you got pretty good ball to start the game on the opening script. You got basically nothing in the middle 2 quarters, and then Tua got hot in the 4th quarter and got a touchdown when it mattered. That was how it went last night. I think Miami had, 8 yards in the 3rd quarter, something like that, on offense. But the odd part is, Tua historically, at least as a Dolphin, has done most of his damage from the pocket and most of his damage getting the ball out quick. I think I saw a stat where the Rams played 2 high safeties last night on 93% of the snaps, which was the highest any team has done in the league since 2006. So clearly teams are making a concerted effort to take away some of these deep shots and taking away the intermediate deep ball. Well, not the intermediate deep ball, but the intermediate throws over the middle, which is where Tua was dynamite last year and really has been his entire tenure under Mike McDaniel. Teams have figured out how to take that away. That's basically been closed door. You're going to have to figure out how to beat them other ways. And the Rams' defensive front, and Kobe Turner is one of the best young defensive tackles in the league. No surprise, he kind of wrecked shop last night against Robert Jones quite a bit. Tua didn't do very much well from the pocket at all. It was all kind of stuff that was either him moving by design or him kind of making plays on the run. You think about the long pass to Jaylen Waddle on the opening drive of the game. You think about the pressure he evaded by spinning out and then buying time and kind of hitting that floater to Raheem Mostert, who got some yards after catch. Don't really see that much from Tua. And I think he was, 5 of 6 throwing on the run for 70-some yards, and then was 7 of 9 out of the pocket, 7 of 8 out of the pocket for over 100 yards. And it's kind of weird. You look at the performance that he gave you out of the pocket. That was the $200 million quarterback we've been waiting to see. Whereas a week ago against Buffalo, he was playing the $200 million quarterback the entire game. Most of that was from the pocket. Last night, the version of Tua we got where he was in the pocket was not good. Not good at all. And I think the Rams, had a pretty nice scheme to kind of combat that and got pressures. Pretty much all the pressures came from the front side A and B gaps, which is around Robert Jones, the left guard. He did not have a good night. They did a lot of stunts. They did some games. They blitzed through that gap and got into Tua's face. I don't know why Tua does not throw the ball away in some of those situations, just needlessly costing you field position by holding onto the ball and eating sacks. And we saw some of the old bad habits that I think that were kind of broken away from, or Tua had broken away from last year, kind of crept up and played kind of reckless. And that wasn't a confidence-inspiring performance the way the game against Buffalo was the week before. So I think now the big challenge for him is can you string together these good performances one after the next? And you're going to have some challenges with that coming up just because of some of the injuries you've sustained. And you look at Miami last night, no Austin Jackson, who we've been told now is out for the remainder of the season. That's a blow. Not that he's necessarily great in pass protection, but he'd been really good in run blocking this year. Alec Ingold was kind of scratched before the game. I don't remember him being talked about as missing that game. I don't know if that was an injury that popped up late or some kind of other bizarro decision that happened, but not having him out there, he's been tremendous ever since the New England game, outside of the fumble he had against Indianapolis. Missed him last night, and you look at their running game last night, 67 yards on 22 carries. 18 of that came on the one touchdown run by Malik Washington. So not a good night overall. Devon Achane, the majority of the carries, 12 for 37, just over 3 yards a carry. And I think the Rams kind of dialed in on some of the stuff they were doing with Jaylen Wright, because he had 5 carries for just 3 yards. Just wasn't a good performance last night on offense, kind of any way you slice it, outside of that first drive and some of the off-script stuff that you had from Tua. Leading receiver was Jaylen Waddle with 3 for 57 yards. Jonnu Smith, Tyreek Hill both had 3 catches. Kind of blew my mind, but then it made a bunch of sense that Devon Achane is the leading receiver on the Dolphins this year. He had another 5 catches last night, but only 15 yards. Just not a great offensive performance, but it was enough to get the win. And you look at kind of what happened on the offensive line. Kendall Lamb was okay in pass pro, not great, but okay, but was pretty awful in run blocking the entire night. And then there was a weird circumstance where Patrick Paul came in for one play in the first half at right tackle, and then Kendall Lamb came back in. I don't know if he lost a shoe or his helmet or something like that, but I don't know. That was odd. Robert Jones had a bad game. Last night was kind of the first time we saw Aaron Brewer kind of get bullied. Bobby Brown III, the Rams nose tackle, had a pretty nice ball game. 2 tackles for loss. The Rams had 10 tackles for loss on the night. So just a bunch of negative plays from the Dolphins offense. I think they have to figure out a way to get Hill and Waddle more involved, even if it's not hitting the big shot plays or the deep over the middle intermediate stuff that they were so good at last year. Tougher to do because your offensive line can't pass block straight up outside of Teron Armstead, who, other than maybe Calais Campbell, has been the best Dolphins performer at any position this year. Those two, the long in the tooth vets, have been the rock steady performers throughout the entire season. And you're going to have to make some adjustments coming up because you've got Max Crosby coming to town. As far as I know, Christian Wilkins is still on IR for the Raiders, so I don't know that we'll see him. But, Kendall Lamb against Max Crosby, you're going to have to do a lot of stuff to kind of protect yourself there. Now, being said, I think the Dolphins have done a good job of mitigating elite pass rushers like that in those circumstances. You recall last year against Dallas, they did not have Austin Jackson. They had Teron Armstead and Kendall Lamb to kind of combat Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, and did a pretty bang-up job of that. You're going to have to kind of put one of those game plans together against the Raiders this week, and I think you're going to have to find another way to kind of run the ball, especially if you're down Alec Ingold again. I thought Lester Cotton acquitted himself all right coming in for Robert Jones. I don't know what the injury issue was there. But just offensively, not a great performance, but they had glimpses of it, stretches of it, where they did enough to kind of stay in charge the entire game. And that was kind of the the complementary football we've been lacking. Defensively, probably the best performance of the season. You got 4 sacks, 2 takeaways, 7 tackles for loss, 5 passes deflected, and 6 other quarterback hits on Matthew Stafford. And that's without Bradley Chubb and Jaylen Phillips. So I thought that was a masterful game plan by Anthony Weaver. They knew how to attack Stafford in the pocket and kind of keep him in the pocket. They knew, other than the one, tip your cap to Cooper Kupp, but other than the one-handed catch he made on the corner route, they kind of took that away from the Rams. Played a bunch of different coverages. A lot of disguised cover 3 was in there. Credit where credit's due. Jordan Poyer's best game as a Dolphin by far. Not that the bar was high at all. It was pretty fucking low to have his best game, but it was a pretty good game last night. He didn't wreck much for you, which is a good thing. I really thought that having Sealer back sort of unlocked the ability to play multiple fronts on the defense. You got to play Calais Campbell more as a heavy end. Miami, if you can call it a base defense anymore when you're not in nickel, played sort of a weird underfront where you're playing with your nose tackle kind of a half gap wider, so playing as a 2-eye with a 3 technique instead of a 1 or a shade in a 3 technique. But Calais Campbell plays that strong side end with Tyus Bowser, and it looks pretty good. I thought they did a pretty nice job of stunting and finding ways to get home in the pass rush. Really nice to see Chop Robinson kind of coming into his own. Was pretty disruptive last night. I liked some of the simulated pressures that they ran on third downs where they showed guys coming and dropped off. You think about the Javon Holland sack. Everyone showed from the defense's right. You heard it on the broadcast. Stafford made a Louis or a Lucy call to slide the protection left. Those guys dropped. Holland came untouched and got a big sack. Knocked the Rams out of field goal range or deep field goal range. So, some pretty impressive stuff. And if you go through and you look at it, the Dolphins' third best third down defense in the league. They had the bad game against Arizona, which knocked them off the top spot, but still third. I believe they are 10th in rushing defense now, and 8th in passing defense. So doing some nice things without much teeth. I think kind of whatever happens the rest of the way and whatever changes occur on the coaching staff or the front office, in a vacuum, I'd like to see what Anthony Weaver could do in year 2 of this defense if you can kind of bolster the defensive line, bolster the safeties. Chloe approves of that. And you have to figure out another linebacker to pair with Jordan Brooks. But I was very impressed with Anthony Walker last night. I don't think he's as aggressive at attacking gaps as the way David Long was. So you're seeing a little bit less in run defense, but I also think at the same time, this defense does not suit David Long the way his defense is in Tennessee, and then the way Fangio's defense last year in Miami suited him, where he could kind of play off of it. This is more of a gap control style of defense, and having David Long kind of engage those blockers one-on-one and protect a gap isn't great. Anthony Walker's got more size and he's able to do that, but he's still not the run game enforcer you had with David Long. So I'd like to see kind of where that development goes moving forward. I'd like to see more use of Chop Robinson and getting creative with him. Interesting that they claimed Tyrell Dodson off of waivers from Seattle. He had been a pretty good player for Buffalo, went out to Seattle to be part of the Mike McDonald defense, which is Miami's defense, but cut by them. So that was an interesting acquisition to see brought in. And I think it was good to see Cam Smith kind of get some run last night against a really talented receiver duo in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Smith took some lumps, but I think the cool part about it is what you see kind of these last 3 weeks, Buffalo, Arizona, and last night, he's not making the same mistakes twice. He's learned from it. there's still some things he's got to clean up. Like, Miami played a variation of Tampa 2 last night a little bit, and you had a sort of a smash concept by the Rams, or not really, it was more of a smash flat, and Cam Smith kind of got his eyes caught on the back coming out of the backfield and didn't get enough depth, and they were able to hit a short corner route over the top of him because the safety couldn't get over. Stuff like that's got to get cleaned up, but I think it's intriguing to see guys like Chop Robinson, Anthony Walker, Cam Smith keep developing. Kader Kohu's kind of developed a lot more than I thought in this defense. And Javon Holland had a really nice game back last night. If you can keep him healthy, I think he can do a lot of cool stuff in this defense. It was just an overall great performance. Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell dominated up front. You held the Rams to, I believe it was 70 rushing yards on the nose, under 4 yards per carry for the game. Although a lot of that's aided by Matthew Stafford taking a knee, but before half. But did a nice job. They limited the big plays in the passing game. Everything was pretty much kept underneath, minus the one corner route that Cooper Kupp caught one-handed. And just, I think overall did a nice job of confusing Matthew Stafford and making him take the shorter stuff underneath. Miami tackled really well. In my opinion, their best tackling game of the season. Rallied to the ball and got things taken care of that way. So, I guess things to build on from the defense. If you get Bradley Chubb coming back here in a couple weeks, that could be a nice boon for you. If Anthony Walker keeps developing, I think that's a situation you can look at for the future. Tyrell Dodson, how does he play into things? Is this the end of David Long in Miami? I think if this scheme is basically what we're seeing is what it's going to be, then I would imagine it probably is the end for David Long. It's just a matter of when and not if. So some interesting things to watch with the defense, and special teams played pretty well last night. The only penalty that Miami had the entire game was Saron Neal running out of bounds on the punt. Otherwise, Jason Sanders, 3 big field goals, 2 from 50 plus. I mean, not a lot to complain about in the game, other than kind of the clunkiness of the offense. And I think you've got an opponent the next week against the Raiders that you can kind of clean some of those ills up a little bit, and maybe you have a performance where you hit 30 points or more for the first time this year. So all in all, a nice road victory, a change of pace for the Dolphins. And I asked around several people who are way more in the know than I am, and there really is, whether this started from McDaniel or top down from Stephen Ross, I don't know, but there really is a collective belief that this team can go on a bit of a run. And, I know I've been a proponent of tearing this thing down to the studs, and I suppose that's still on the table if they go belly up from here, but the football math just doesn't seem like it's going to be the case, because if you look at the remaining schedule, you've still got the Raiders and Patriots at home. You've still got 2 games against the Jets, although one of those is on the road in cold weather, and one against Cleveland, albeit on the road in cold weather. If the team plays to their potential, you should have 5 more wins, which would give you 8. So I think the football math, and you have a pretty good chance to run those 5 games, regardless of the weather history under Mike McDaniel, where they're like 0-8 when the temperature's 40 degrees or below. You're probably going to face that 3 times, at Green Bay, at Cleveland, at the Jets. But can you steal 1 or 2 out of the 3 games of at Green Bay on Thanksgiving? That one feels like a no to me, even though Green Bay's not played that great. Home against San Francisco, and then at Houston. If you can get one or two out of those three, you might have enough to kind of back your way into the playoffs. Now, I guess in the grand scheme of things, to me, that still smells like a wild card loss if you're going to end up having to go to Baltimore or Buffalo or Pittsburgh or even Kansas City in round one. I don't think you're coming out of there with a dub. And you're kind of right back to where you were. But I guess given, the stumble Miami took out of the gates to start the season, that's a respectable finish. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I think you still need some changes to get yourself over that hump. But I guess that's kind of the message now, is we're along for the ride. I think, I would put it to you like this: if they don't go into that Green Bay game at 5-6, then I think that tells you what you need to know about this team. They're not where they need to be, and you got to make changes. If they go into Green Bay at 5-6, then, I think the message has resonated from Mike McDaniel to the players. And it shows me that he hasn't lost control of the team. The team still believes, and the team still invested in trying to make this happen. What they do from there, I don't know. The Green Bay game, if it was on a Sunday, I would feel better about Miami's chances, but that it's on a short week, I just don't like that. Kind of knowing how they've prepared for Thursday night games in the McDaniel era before, I just don't see it. You think back to the ones they've had. You got smoked by Buffalo this year. You had the disaster in Cincinnati a couple years ago when Tua got knocked out. I'm trying to remember if there's any other Thursday games they've had. But they haven't gone well. So, and Chloe does not approve of Thursday night football very much, and it's a tough battle. But that'd be my thought: is if you can see them get to 5-6 going into Green Bay, then at least the team is kind of all rowing and moving in the same direction. Shorter episode this week. I'll have a recap episode of the Raiders game next week. And then again, reminder, because of my travel schedule, I will be at the game against New England down in Miami. But I will do one episode that week recapping both the Patriots game and the Packers game that weekend. That's going to do it for me. Follow me on Twitter at KevinMD4. Follow the show on DolphinsTalk.com. Follow the articles on DolphinsTalk.com. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean. I'd be remiss because I forgot about this, but the whiskey of the night, same as last week, Widow Jane, age 10, bourbon. That's our sip on a Victory Tuesday. I'll see you guys next week. This episode of Dolphins Talk Weekly was brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship to you. International fans too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com.